Congratulations, you made it to the Exfil. You can sit back and relax, unpack your bags, hang on to all your high-tier ammo because Battlestate doesn't want you to have any, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hey there, Mike, aka MTBtrigger here, and with me as always is my co-host Ronal, aka Eric. If you're brand new, welcome. This is an Escape from Tarkov podcast where we talk about all things EFT, and our goal is to get better at the game, and we hope you come along with us for that journey. If you enjoy the show, if you've been around for a while, and you'd love to hear it back, let us know by giving us a rating. The best thing you can do, doesn't matter what platform you're on, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you listen, give us a 5 stars, a thumbs up, a like, whatever it is. That's the best way to help us out. We appreciate you doing it.
And whatever you do on the platform to like or subscribe or whatever, it's free. And we appreciate everybody doing that and supporting the show. Well, this week we're back. We're going to get into talking about this wipe and where we're at, what we like about the changes Battlestate's made, what we don't like about the changes that Battlestate's made to the game. We've got lots of episodes queued up. But for this first one, after taking a little bit of a break, we're just going to talk about what it's like to get back into Tarkov after taking a wipe off. So Trigger, what should we hit first?
Yeah, there's so much because, one of the crazy parts about playing I played for like a week last wipe, and I feel like I didn't play the second half of the wipe prior to that. So there's so many things that I actually don't know where they landed as far as like when they entered the game. Like I read the like patch 14 notes and all of the various things that came with that. Some of the stuff that I haven't seen yet or even ran into. But then there's things that I know were put in at the end of 2 wipes ago during last wipe, and I'm encountering a lot of it. I guess I don't really know where to start on the changes. So perhaps the best place to start is knocking the old rust off the guns and the hideout and figuring out how to play this game again. Because man, every time I take any kind of break, whether it's short or long, it is just an absolute train wreck when I'm trying to figure out how to shoot, how to heal, how long it takes to get battle. Like there's such a curve in learning the game initially, but there's a curve coming to it from playing anything else. I kind of want to start there.
Absolutely. The last wipe, I think I did 5 raids total, and I just decided, hey, I've played a lot of Tarkov. I'm going to take this wipe off. I'm glad I did because in general, if you take a wipe off, that doesn't mean you don't like the game or, you're super negative. It's a seasonal game, and it was nice to take a season off because coming back to it feels a little bit fresh, but yet very familiar all at the same time. But yes, Tarkov definitely requires a different way of playing it than most FPS games. But I would say the biggest thing is I've had to overcome a little bit of gear fear, which was unusual because the last time I played 2 wipes ago, I played a lot, and there was a couple wipes in a row that we played a lot. So I just really haven't felt gear fear since we started playing the game. What has it been, like 5 years ago now or whatever. So I would say feeling a little bit of gear fear for the first couple levels was the first initial thing that I kind of had to get over. Did you feel that at all or not really?
Well, that's interesting because I definitely did, and I think I still am, right? We're a couple weeks into this swipe, and the inventory management is in full swing. I do remember initially being like, oh man, I don't want to run this MDR because I don't want to lose it. I don't want to put a sight on it. It's the only, I've got M4s that are full auto, but I don't have the gas blocks, so you're not going to have a good sight on them. I remember that. I looked at that MDR when I first fired up the wipe and got in, and I was like, oh, that's what I want to run. But man, I didn't want to run it. It took me a few raids before I was even willing to bring out the M4s or the MDRs. And it's just funny, right? Because like you said, I haven't experienced gear fear in quite a while, but after not playing, I'm like, ooh, these are valuable. I know they're valuable because they're good. They're full auto. I can put a sight on this right away. So I didn't want to go into the first raids like, and lose it. In addition to that, I'm also experiencing the same thing with good ammo, which we kind of joked about at the top of the show. but I'm also experiencing it with good armor. Like I have a couple class 5 armors, I have a couple class 6 armors that I've picked up through quest rewards, in stashes or off of other players, and I'm very selective of when I use those. And when I finished playing last time, I was like, I'm going to use the best equipment available all the time. And now I'm a little more selective of when I do it because of the rarity of armor, the new armor plate system, as well as, my perceived ammo rarity.
Yeah, it's really interesting having an EOD account because you open the game and you're level, 1 and you're ready to go out there and you have just a couple of things which for sure you're only going to be able to use and lose. And then you're not going to be able to have access to them for a while. I found myself hesitant to use my M4s right away and my MDRs right away and the 1 or 2 nice armors that you get. And it was really interesting because even though the armor that I was getting from scavving was roughly the same, I was much more willing to lose a scav kit that I pulled out of interchange, basically equivalent kit from the EOD game startup kit that you get. So I don't know, I found it to be pretty interesting and a little bit unsettling at first because I really was intentional about what I did for those first couple levels. And then, of course, when you run into some problems and you start dying, you can very quickly get down to nothing. And you don't have the flea market till 15. So I found that scavving early on really, for me, was the way that I kept that gear train kind of going. But eventually this wipe just said, hey, I'm going to get through it. And I ended up losing all of that stuff sometime before level 15 for sure. I don't remember exactly when, but I think that it is really interesting to come back to Tarkov after taking a whole wipe off and feel a little bit of gear fear because of EOD, especially because of what they give you in the beginning.
I was laughing, and it took everything in my power not to interrupt you when you were talking about the trooper vest, the USEC armor. I actually feel the same way about the trooper armor specifically. That was the thing that I was least likely to use in the beginning because I value that so highly early on, that class 4 armor. What's really funny is I feel like I win the early wipe if I kill another player and successfully extract with their trooper armor in levels 1 to 15. That is like the ultimate prize, is taking somebody else's USEC armor because it was the free one from the EOD kit. I don't know why, but I always view that as winning in the first 15 levels.
Oh, I totally agree. And you know that you are definitely exfilling with something that matters to them, right? Because it is so difficult in those first couple of levels to be competitive. Before you're level 15, the game is very punishing. And EOD gives you a slight advantage, but almost a slight disadvantage. Like, I think that in a way, having EOD can actually make gear fear worse. Because what you're going to end up having is a couple of good items, just a little bit of a taste of good items. And you're going to stare at those things in your stash. You're going to stare at that M4. You're going to stare at that stack of 855. And you're going to stare at that trooper armor. And you're going to stare at that Comtac. Especially if you are a seasoned player, you're going to say, okay, I know that I am not going to be able to get any more of these unless I find them now for a while. And I felt like a little bit of gear fear there, and it was interesting, and I wanted to make sure we talked about it, because I'm sure we're not the only ones who thought that.
Yeah, it's definitely not something I've felt in a while, and it actually was kind of a neat feeling to be nervous in some of the early raids. I keep finding everything we're talking about, it's just like driving me towards like talking about Ground Zero. But I think we hold that because I think Ground Zero deserves an entire episode of its own. So I'm going to intentionally not talk specifics there. And there's a few topics that I think, it's been a while since we've recorded. So, we have a couple episodes planned, everybody. So look forward to those. I think we'll do an entire dissection of Ground Zero. But you talked about, number one, the gear fear. And I think a lot of people feel that early wipe. It's just like, you don't want to get behind. You don't want to lose these kits. I know I don't get M855 for these M4s and MDRs till later. It really adds some extra spice to those early levels and to the early maps when you kill a guy who's using an MDR or an M4 and you can bring that out. And for me, that's actually what kind of got rid of my gear fear when I was like level 4 or 5. I was using like an SKS or something with FMJ, and I remember killing a PMC that was running the MDR and a trooper kit, and I ended up taking out his trooper, his MDR, like the full kit, right, top to bottom, helmet, Comtacs, the whole bit. then running his kit, because in my mind it's free, right? It's gamer math, right? I didn't pay for it, he did. So I ran that kit, and then from that point on, I was like, oh, I can get some real kills here with the sight on this MDR. And that actually let me plow through the handful of quests much faster, I think, than what I was doing with, the scav guns like you were doing and things like that. So I think those early levels are kind of fascinating, especially with that new map. Now that we took a break, we both came back and we both experienced a similar thing on Gear Fear, but let's talk about that 1 to 15 experience in a new wipe, because we haven't done it in a while. What do you think about it now? How did you experience it?
I think that the overall experience leveling 1 to 15 is better now with the Ground Zero map. I really like that Battlestate recognized that the new player experience on Tarkov needed a revamp. We definitely are going to devote an episode, maybe 2, to Ground Zero, so look forward to that. And I'm not going to get into my thoughts on Ground Zero now, other than to say the idea of devoting something that is limited to new players or lower level players is something I think the game needs, just because of the way that Tarkov works and how punishing it is. As far as the leveling journey and experience, I think the game is very broken. It's 2 different games, really. So you could say it's not broken. You could say that it's really 2 different games. It's like Tarkov Part 1 and Tarkov Part 2. And Tarkov Part 1 is the punishing experience of getting to level 15 without the flea market. So in a way, you have to learn the game in order to progress. You have to be able to force yourself through understanding where items drop so your hideout can get upgraded. You have to be able to force yourself through learning maps so you can complete tasks to get XP, because you can't just kill scavs. You have to kill a lot of scavs to level without getting tasks done. So I do think that there's some benefit to being forced to play the game without the benefit of the flea market and basically unlimited resources. But I do think the balance could be tweaked, because it really is a completely different game. And subsequently, you're a much stronger PMC once you get to level 15. So I'm not saying that I think that the flea market should be at level 0 necessarily, but there definitely feels like room for tweaking and improvement.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, right? Because I think everybody's going to experience 1 to 15 different depending on your playtime and your playstyle. But I kind of agree with you. I think that the 1 to 15 experience, I think they are working on enhancing it, which is good. I'm glad that they are looking at that part of the game and not just the mid and end game, which is where a lot of focus goes into new guns, new maps, things like that, new quests. Those come later. So seeing new stuff in the beginning is great. Specifically on the flea market, though, I do think that the legacy decision of theirs to move that to level 15, I think it's a little antiquated at this point, because number one, like levels like 10 to 14, your stash ends up such a nightmare. And there's really no reason for it, because like you said, when you hit 15 and you have all this stuff in your stash, if you're a collector like myself, you end up selling all this stuff and then you're sitting on millions of rubles, and then you can put suppressors on everything, you can kick guns out the way you want, you can buy class 3 armors, you can buy class 4 armors. It really does. It's a different game. 1 to 14 is radically different than 15 plus just because of that access. And I don't know that flea market access is as meaningful of a barrier as it used to be in the game. Now that they're expanding quest lines, they're adding new maps. You know, you splinter off into so many quests around in the late teens and into the 20s. So I wonder with some of the new stuff they've added, and this kind of goes into these changes that we've ran into. Well, in past wipes, if someone was like, hey man, I know you got to 15 and I really need a fuel conditioner for this trade, you know, you would occasionally, or I know some people probably did it a lot, and I know there's some gray area there on whether it's allowed or not. But now they've put things into the game where you bring items into a raid, and if you try to throw a backpack or that item on the ground, there's a prompt that says this item will be irrevocably is that the word? Irrevocably? It sounds like it's right. I don't know. It will be forever destroyed if you throw it on the ground. And so they've put other protections in, I think, around like RMT and trading, which is why the flea market was moved in the first place. So I just look at it and wonder if the flea market at 15 should move back to 10 or, you know, whatever. Like, I think there should be a little gate on it. They probably don't want brand new accounts exploiting or finding something and going to sell it. But man, 15 just seems like such a different game. and an unnecessary barrier. I think we've talked about it in the past. What if they put trade goods or barter items starting at level 5, and then at level 10 you can, unlock gun parts, and then level 15 unlocks the rest? I don't know. I just think it needs looked at again, because I think it was moved for RMT, but they have so many other captures in there for that specific thing. And it really feels like you have to rush to 15 because you don't want to get behind, and if you don't get there, you're not going to be competitive. And I don't think that's the feeling that all players should have to experience in the beginning of a wipe.
I tend to agree. I think that a good balanced point for the flea market is level 10. Because if you think about the total number of XP that it takes to get from level 0 or level 1 to level 10, it's 63,723. And then if you look at the total number of XP to get from 10 to level 15, so by level 15, you're at 161,000 XP. It takes 1.5 times. It takes an extra 100,000 XP to go from 10 to 15. And I found that part of the questing to be a little bit grindy and unnecessary. I don't think that the game is broken if you get the flea market at level 10, because it didn't change anything. Because I went from scrimping along and having a stash full of things which I knew I was going to sell on the flea market. I had 3 scav junk boxes full of stuff I was going to sell once I hit level 15, and a bunch of guns I'd gotten from scavs, and my stash was full. Managing it was this constant turnover of items that I had to deal with, knowing full well that I could get cases at level 15. I just had to get there to get them. That didn't teach me anything about the game. It didn't make me enjoy the game anymore. It just was grindy and ridiculous, I think, for no reason. It wasn't fun. That's why I think that at level 10, you've spent 63,000 XP worth of time playing the game. And so that's probably about maybe 15 quests or 15 tasks, and probably killing 25 or 30 scavs and maybe 10 PMCs at that point, somewhere in that neighborhood. You've learned how the game mechanics work, and now you can dive into the item part of the game and the hideout part of the game, and you can start getting your hideout upgraded and started and things like that. I would say that after playing through level 15 now, I would say level 10 is when the flea market should be unlocked. That feels like a good and balanced spot.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think not having it immediately available is fine. And I think that when you look at the grand scheme of things, let's say the end game is unlocking max traders. I don't know what the amount of experience is, but that happens at, I think, level 42 now. And the amount of experience to go from level 15 to 42 is insane compared to 1 to 15. So it was arbitrarily moved to level 15 before. I think with some of the other systems, they could move it back to level 10. And when you look at the difference between how much experience it takes to get to level 10 versus level 15 compared to level 42, it's negligible at best, right? I just think that it's a little punishing unnecessarily now that those other systems are in play. But as we were talking about the flea market and unlocking it, when I did unlock it this swipe, I was really looking forward to something in particular, and it wasn't there. And I remember when I unlocked the flea market in past wipes, the first thing I went and did was I went and bought the best ammo I could on the flea for whatever gun I was using or was building at that time. And, at level 15 or shortly thereafter, I remember unlocking the ump that you can build from Peacekeeper, which is one of the really strong, early mid-game fully automatic guns. And I was like, okay, great. I'm going to go buy, the 45 caliber AP ammo or whatever. And then I started seeing how little ammo of it was available on the flea. And there was some better ammo that I could buy from traders, but there's a lot of stuff that's no longer able to be bought on the flea. And the stuff that is higher tier and on the flea is really expensive because of how rare some of the ammo types are now.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. And in general, I think it's a great thing. The fights generally seem to be lasting a little bit longer, and it's not just getting lasered by some high tier ammo. And it may end up like that as people get past level 42 and the wipe drags on. Casual players drop out, and it's just the people who really, really enjoy Tarkov end up wanting to run high tier ammo and everything. But it should be a little bit more balanced by that time and competitive, I'll say, because the general player base will be kind of moving along if you still want to play. But getting back to where we are now in the wipe, I think this was a great decision. I find myself caring about what the different ammo types are more than I ever have. I never cared before. It was just get whatever the top tier ammo is. Once you get it, either buy it on the flea or unlock it with a trade or whatever, and just fill your ammo cases with that. You run that, and it doesn't matter. And now I have used the Tarkov ammo guide more, I think, than I ever have in the past. And I actually think that's kind of cool.
I think that's really cool, and I have too. I find some random ammo, and I'm like, oh, is this good? Is this medium good? Like, what is it? I don't even know what this is. Furthermore, though, you said something a minute ago that I just absolutely agree with. I think, and I'll get to it in a second, but the thing that pushed me out of the game in the previous wipe that I only played for a week or two was not just the fact they had announced it was going to be kind of a short wipe, but I played for the first week, and then I believe I took a week off. I think I had a vacation with my family, and I got back. So it's like, day 2 of week 3 Tarkov, right? So it's like 16, 17 days into the wipe at that point. And I fire it up. I'm like, level 15 or 16 after grinding for a week when it first dropped. The first 3 raids after I got back, I got destroyed by M995. All 3 raids really fast. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get destroyed as I try to catch up or whatever. And you know what? It may have just been chance. I may have been really unlucky. It may have just been, just complete RNG as to why I got killed. But that feeling of seeing killed by M995 3 raids in a row caused me to just be like, yeah, I'm just not interested. I feel behind. And that was kind of it. I'm like, it's going to be a short wipe. I need a break. Fast forward to this wipe and the beginning fights, I feel like I have a chance. If I die, I look at the ammo and it's been PS or, M855, or even now into like week 2 and 3, it's still those same ammos. It's PS, it's 855. I have been killed by a handful of, higher tier ammo, but I haven't ran into it very often. And I think that's really cool because number one, if I get shot and it's not a headshot, I feel like I have a chance. I can maneuver, I can shoot back, I can make some decisions in the moment with what to do, whereas it didn't feel that way in past wipes. Additionally, I also feel like you hear a lot more gunfire on the maps, and that's been really interesting in just hearing how the map's unraveling over time. And I noticed this especially on customs, where fights will last a lot longer, and you will hear players having to shoot more bullets at scavs. You'll hear player fights that last longer, and it kind of raises the nerves a little bit when you get into a long fight, because that kind of third-party mentality comes in. Like, I don't want that other person or that other group to come over here because this fight is lasting longer. But it's really interesting to be able to stay alive longer this late into the early wipe. I think it's a phenomenal change, and I'm really glad they did it. Now, do I want good ammo? Absolutely. But I'm really okay with not having access to it yet. I think I'm level 27, and the best ammo I can buy is AP 6.3, but that's if Peacekeeper has it, and it's once every, 3.5 hours. I mean, I can't even remember the last time I was able to buy it. It sells out almost instantly, so I think even the good ammo that does exist, as you start to unlock it, it's still really hard to get your hands on it.
It is. And I do think that's still good for the game, though. I think that as people engage in longer fights, a couple of things happen. You get better with your guns. You learn how to aim a little bit better instead of just mag dumping and then everyone's dead. If you have to run around and actually chase someone in a fight, I think that's really good for player skill progression. I also think that it's just more fun to not just get insta-killed. Also in Tarkov 2, you should have a little bit of a chance, because with the new armor system and the armor plates, each one of the armors has a variable amount of hit points. And so the guns and the bullets and all this stuff kind of working together and not covering your armpits, but exposing your thorax as much. And it's just kind of a whole new, interesting kind of feel to the way that the gunfights work. And I think that having ammo that is not necessarily optimized for either flesh damage or for armor pen is a good thing. Like, I just think it's good to have to use whatever you can find. And to me, that feels a lot more like Tarkov being a survival game than artificially gating the flea market at 15.
I was worried about the ammo situation and the recoil change. right? They did a significant recoil reduction, I guess I would say, or recoil control, which has made a lot of the guns, even some of the like loved guns that I used for wipe after wipe in the beginning, like the SKS, for example. It is now really fun to shoot some of these guns. And I was a little worried that the ammo nerf was because the guns were too easy, that, there wasn't as much skill that went into using the guns, because it was kind of fun to learn how to use those things and develop that skill. But I think it might have been a little too punishing early when you're using like a VEP or an SKS and you shoot a couple rounds and you're shooting into the sky. I think they've hit a really good level for the early wipe. I do have some concerns for later in the wipe with the recoil, but I also don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing. The balance they've struck early on, I've just had a lot of fun playing the game. I know Nikita doesn't want me to have fun playing the game, but I've enjoyed the combat. And I think my key takeaway from this wipe's early combat is that when I die, it's my fault, right? I'm no longer blaming it like, if that guy didn't have M995, I would have had a chance. No, it's usually me. It's positioning, or I chose to bring in a semi-auto gun and he sprayed me down with a full magazine full of PS or whatever the garbage ammo he was shooting. And I like that. I like that it's me. It's my positioning. It's my gunplay. And every death I've had has been my fault. And I can point to things that I could have done better. And I don't have to look so much at like, he had too good of armor or too good of ammo for this stage in the wipe. That's not to say like I've found some M62. I've found some M993. But I'm kind of cherishing those, and I haven't used a lot of it. And from what I've experienced of other players killing me, everybody must be doing the same, or a lot of players are in that same boat, because it's kind of hard to find.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are using, I will call them mid-tier kind of ammos, right? So your PS, and maybe you drop a couple of BPs into your mag, right? If you're using AKs, which a lot of people are right now, because that's where a lot of the progression is for the bulk of people. And I think that that's a very good thing. I think it makes it exciting to open a crate or open a bag or open just any kind of container and say, there's 20 rounds of M80 in there. And you're like, what do I do with that, right? And I think that it's very engaging to have gameplay that specifically makes all the stuff that you interact with in the world have more consequences. And I think having good ammo spread out along in each map and looking to find it and whatever, and then you have to decide, I only have so much of this, and if I get killed and it's in my gun, I lose it, right? And so I don't necessarily want to lose it all, but I still want to be effective. And I've had some really, really interesting mags that I've pulled off of PMCs where I've unloaded them to see what ammo's in there, and there's like 3 different kinds of ammo. They're filling them with it's like peppered with a couple of good ammo, but mostly filled with garbage ammo as like filler. And I think that is really interesting because it takes time to do that, but it also means that, hey, they're being intentional about rationing out the good ammo because it's just not as available. And that makes you make choices too. I mean, instead of just being able to have unlimited money in the flea market, buy whatever top tier ammo and then just mag dump whenever you fire your gun. I mean, if you want to play like that, go play Call of Duty, right? That's not what Tarkov should be, given how complicated the game is and how many systems are in the game. And so I really like this change. I mean, eventually, everyone will be past 42. They'll be able to buy top tier ammo, but even then, it'll be on a reset, like you said. So a trader reset will probably slow down the amount of top tier ammo that's in the game this wipe. But then there's also hideout crafts, those kinds of things too. But even then you can only make so much of it or only have access to so much of it. So it's not like you're going to be doing raid after raid after raid, just running top tier ammo with some laser gun. And I think that's just good for the game because it levels the playing field. It means that someone who's level 42 isn't going to kill someone who's level 27 as easily. And it also makes skill matter more than just having, I just happen to have a better gun with better ergo and better ammo, and so you don't have a chance.
I'm actually really surprised Battlestate made this change. I feel like this has been, high tier gear has been an issue for a while. I think it was too easy to get. I think for a while, like Class 6 armors, class 5 armors were so good that the only answer was to make good ammo more available. And, when you're not wearing that stuff or you're not shooting that stuff, it never felt good to die to it. And so I'm a little surprised they went away from that game design, though. And I'm glad for it, because it really has made the early game fun again. Now, interestingly, you talked about how some of that ammo will come back or be available later in the game when people can, farm the traders for resets. But I didn't research fully the changes on when and where stuff's available. But I'm already noticing that they've either moved a bunch of different ammo to later traders, or I'm a suspect that if I went and looked it up, I think they've probably removed a lot of it from traders. And I'm guessing that it's now crafted, right? And the cooldowns may have been adjusted. Now, the thing that's even better about this, and I noticed this on the traders, and I don't know when this was added, and again, I don't know if that was this wipe or before, but one of the things I really like is when completing some of the quests, some of the rewards now are you can now craft this item. And maybe that's been a thing for a long time, but I never really paid attention to it. But now when you get a quest reward of, now you can craft this item. In the past, I remember the quest rewards being you can, buy this from a trader now. But unlocking crafts, I think, is also a really interesting gate to certain things where it's like, so you want access to, insert high tier ammo here. Here's a hard task you got to complete to do it. And I think there's some really interesting gameplay things that can go along with it. I can't remember which one I was looking at, but I kind of like the story-driven aspect to it. Like, I think it's Shooterborn in Heaven now, where once you complete Shooterborn in Heaven, I think you then get access to a new gun. Number one, I think you also get access to a certain type of ammo. And I think that's a really cool game design where it's like, okay, you want the best stuff, you're going to have to do something really hard in exchange for unlocking the ability to craft it.
Yeah, I think that actually makes it more meaningful and kind of interesting. Now, that does reward players that are higher skill, right? But that's okay. There should be some rewards in the game for people that are higher skill, and we'll see how that plays out in the end. If the balancing of the game tends to get out of balance because high playtime, high skill players can get all of the good stuff, and low playtime players can never get there because Tarkov is a seasonal game. So it's going to be interesting to watch the pacing of that and see if they adjust the pacing, which they might. But I really like the system of unlocking something that you can craft or that you can buy in a trader by completing a task. I think that's a good matching of game design and also fun, because that makes the things that you do meaningful. And what I mean specifically in that way is that if I am a PMC and I just want to run around and get PMC kills, that's a completely different way of playing the game. If I'm a PMC and I'm trying to make it into dorms, into a room, for the 14th time, into room 114, for example, for the 14th time, cough, to try to get a certain item for a quest, right? I think that having a reward for doing a hard quest or task is a very good thing, and having that reward be meaningful. Because right now, or in previous wipes, really, we didn't care about the rewards from tasks because they largely were items which we immediately sold or rubles which we didn't need. And it just really didn't make any difference. And so having a task reward that is meaningful also changes the way that I play the game. Instead of ignoring a task, which I don't care about forever, I now care about, okay, do I need to work on this task which I don't enjoy or don't like, but it leads to a chain that unlocks a feature that I want. And I think that is meaningful gameplay and better game design, because there's a lot of people that want to do Kappa, and I think that's great. If that's your thing, that's your jam, go for it. I have never cared about Kappa at all. To me, having a bigger secure container wasn't worth the amount of time and effort to put in to get Kappa. So having tasks now that unlock different things has changed my perspective on what is worth doing and what's not worth doing at Tarkov. So what do you think about that? Do you even think like that, or do you even care, or what are your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. My overall stance on it is I think it's really cool that they're playing with gating stuff and map gating outside of like a key to get into it like labs, but like the ground zero gating of the player level. and then gating crafted items and when you can buy them from traders and what level you can buy them from traders, I think is interesting because it slows players down in some ways. But I do like what you said about objective-based tasks. And it's like, okay, if you discover that the armor you really like to run, or if there's a helmet you like to run, or there's ammo you really like to shoot, you can go research that and find out what unlocks it. And that may give you some trajectory to what quest lines that you're really focused on. I would have said, if you just asked me when I wasn't, thinking, in podcast mode, I probably would have said, I don't really care because I just kind of try to quest and do experience and do things as they're available. Now I'm sitting here like, oh, I wonder if there's some things that are just a quest or two away in a certain chain that would really help me progress, right? Maybe it's an armor unlock or maybe it's an ammo unlock. While you were talking, I pulled the game up because I figured that I misspoke, and I went and looked at Shooterborn in Heaven, and it just unlocks access to some trader things once you complete it, the sniper rifle specifically. But I was looking at some other tasks, and one of them that I have is minibus, and it's marking the yellow minibuses on interchange, and that gives access to purchase an armor from Ragman level 2, which I have unlocked, but it also unlocks the Strandhog plate carrier to craft. I just think that's really neat because, hey, if you really like running that plate carrier, this is a quest path to go down. And at the stage I'm in, at level 27, I have over 30 tasks available, right? So I kind of just do them, as people want to play on a certain map, or if I'm like, okay, I want to run Shoreline today, I have quests on every single map. This is going to probably make me look a little deeper into what I have available and probably focus me a little bit on certain unlocks because there's probably some really cool things that I'm not far from getting that would really help my progression. So I didn't really think too much about it until we started talking about it. And then you brought up that idea of focused progression and goal-oriented tasks instead of just, like you said, the kind of the arbitrary endgame, which is Kappa for a lot of people. That really hasn't interested me in a few wipes either, just because of the time investment, like you said. But there are certain things in this game that I really like to run, and it's ammo types or gun types, or, maybe it's a suppressor I need to unlock. I really don't even know what's locked behind this stuff. If I had to complete some hard challenges that got me out of my comfort zone, I think that's really cool. And I already experienced that on the Shooterborn in Heaven change. Right, it's gone through a couple iterations. It used to be hit shots over 100 meters, and then I think it went to 125. And now it's just hit 5 headshots on a bunch of maps with a bolt-action rifle. I've found that to be really fun and challenging. I think I completed Interchange because I had to survive Interchange operational task 15 times. Or no, I had to kill 50 scavs. That's what it was. So I was like, cool, well, I'm going to kill scavs with the bolt action, and I'm going to try to kill PMCs while I did it. And I ended up getting all 5 headshots while I was running around the outside map sniping. And that led me to be like, okay, how am I going to get this done on the other maps? I don't usually play with a bolt action outside of the Mosin for the Tarkov shooter quests. It's really made me think about how I'm going to complete that because I like the challenge of that task. Now, the reward isn't something I'm particularly interested in. I'm sure that gun's fun to shoot. I don't think I've ever shot it. But if you added in more of this kind of thing, progressive unlocks down certain chains, it probably becomes more and more interesting the more they do it. So I actually think it's a great, great system and a great addition. And again, it may have been in the game for a while, but it's the first time I'm really digging in again and experiencing it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And I wonder if long-term, if they'll find that they could add more systems behind quest rewards, behind leveling progression that could make leveling more meaningful other than just unlocking traders. Because really today, your level doesn't mean anything except your trader unlock. This is an interesting experiment to see where they go with it. So I think game design wise, I really like this particular system, and I'm hoping that they dive into it more because there's definitely progression that is far more interesting to be had.
Like I said, now my mind's focused on it. So I'm like, I wonder what quests I have right now that might have meaningful unlocks. And I think that we both have an MMO background in playing World of Warcraft and New World and other titles in addition to that. But one of the things that, pure MMO games that aren't seasonal have really leaned into is the concept of gating and finding ways to do it for all segments of the player base. And I don't think that it would be too hard for them to look at things like, okay, we could lock all of this stuff behind, not all this stuff, but even let's just say the batch that's currently available. We could lock these craftable things behind these quests. But perhaps the quests are like tiered, right? Maybe there's tier 1 quests, 2, 3, 4 through 20. I don't know. But maybe things that are locked behind quests that are in tier 1 quests, maybe they toy around with, okay, after 3 weeks of the wipe, those become available to all players. That way, high playtime players can move quickly, work to unlock that stuff, benefit from, selling those crafts on the flea or using the gear, what have you. But then, another way they could do this gating is not just locking it behind quests, but also over time make it available to other players. And then, these high tier ammo things or grenades or armors or whatever, maybe 20 weeks into the wipe, all players, even if you started, a week ago, have access to craft that stuff, right? It's still going to be easier for players that have the rubles, have the economy, have the ability to go find these items. But if a new player hits 15, 3/4 of the way through the wipe and wants to farm up the rubles so they can buy the trade or buy the barter items to craft a good armor, what's a new player at level 15 with a slick really going to do to somebody who's level 50 and running top tier items? And that's where I think there's a little bit of a mismatch right now in how the gating stuff that they're putting in the game works. But I hope over time they keep leaning into this and making it efficient and effective for all types of players and throughout the entire phase of the wipe while it's seasonal.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Because Tarkov is seasonal, a catch-up mechanic is something that probably is necessary. The only thing they really give you is a day or two before the wipe. So, whatever, they'll do some kind of event where everything becomes like 1 ruble and it's just kind of a meme. Something meaningful during the actual wipe itself, like halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, I think would help player retention. Because one of the things you want to do, right, is if you're excited to play a game, you want to get your friends to play it with you. And Tarkov suffers from the same problems that a lot of old MMOs suffered from. It's like, how do I get my friend to play with me in a meaningful way? Your buddy buys the game, gets into it for the first time, doesn't know anything about how the game works, gets killed 2 minutes into the raid, and is like, this is dumb. Now what do? I lost everything, and I have no meaningful way of getting anything back. And so I think they definitely could use some kind of catch-up mechanic. Wouldn't it be interesting if they integrated Arena into that somehow? I'm not sure exactly how they would do it, but maybe what you do in Arena could matter to what you unlock on your PMC. They have said things about Arena mattering for your PMC. 1 PMC, 2 Tarkov modes. And I wonder if they could integrate Arena into that somehow, because Arena is something you can play over and over again without the consequence of losing anything, but you're still getting better at gunplay, you're still understanding Tarkov mechanics, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of opportunity in the game. There's lots of things they could do, but I definitely agree. Tarkov needs a meaningful catch-up system somewhere in the wipe.
Yeah, I feel like you just teed up the next episode. I feel like we need to talk about Arena and Ground Zero, and that's kind of, you kind of hit it on the head. I wasn't thinking in names of terms, but catch-up systems is something that MMOs have really tried hard to figure out and have gotten quite good at. And Tarkov is both interesting, challenging, and rewarding because of how hard it is to get into. But I don't know how long that needs to exist in a given wipe, and I talked about 20 tiers, but maybe it's there's four tiers of traders, right? Your 4 reputations effectively. Maybe it's after 5 weeks, all the items, that you can unlock to buy from tier 1 traders are available, and they're like 1/3 of the cost, right? That way, someone who's new and just getting started, if they couldn't play when it dropped, or they're a brand new player, or they're just coming back, again, maybe they just have, access to, running those guns at 1/3 of the cost, so that they can kind of, grind and push and not feel like they're wasting all their rubles when fighting people that are, fully suppressed and chatted up. So it's definitely something that we haven't seen a lot in Tarkov. You brought up a good point at the end of the wipe when they make everything, really cheap. So they have the mechanic, they have the ability to put a system like that in the game. They do it for a week or two at the end of the wipe. So I'd love to see them toy with catch-up mechanics and continue to dig into this concept of gating, because what they've done with ammo has completely changed the game for me and has renewed my love for the early wipe combat that really made me fall in love with this game back in the second wipe that I played, when I had kind of come to understand the game and knew how to PvP. And I loved that first week of the wipe when combat was just gritty and just messy. And, oh, I forgot my serve kit or my CMS, so I got to hobble around while I fight this guy and shoot him out of morphine or don't. Everything kind of sucks, but in a beautiful way in the beginning of the wipe. So it's whether it was intentional on their part or it was just a happy circumstance. The first 2-3 weeks of this wipe have been just really fun from that standpoint. And man, I've gotten owned. I've done my fair share of owning, but I'm digging the combat right now.
I completely agree. I think it could be really interesting to develop a catch-up mechanism that doesn't make the people who are playing the game feel like they're at a disadvantage, but lets everyone who just started the game, at a later date in the wipe, get to the point where it's competitive. Because two things are kind of true about MMO and first-person shooter games when you combine them. It's not fun for high-tier and high-skill FPS players to just kill noobs, to dump on the new players. It just isn't fun. Because at a certain point, you're playing the game because you enjoy the competitive nature of it. Now, that doesn't always mean that it's not fun to just get an easy PMC kill. But at the same time, also, you don't just want to be dumpstering on people because that's kind of boring. That's just not going to be something you're going to do. But at the same time, also, to have a catch-up mechanism so that the game can stay balanced and stay engaging for high-time players that doesn't necessarily hinder high-time players. One of the ideas when you were talking that I was thinking could be interesting is, what if they did like double, triple XP at a certain point? Because the goal could be to just remove the barrier that exists for people getting to the end of the progression of reputation and the end of the progression of XP to get to level 42, right? So, I mean, you could do that artificially by doubling rep and by doubling XP or by tripling or whatever at a certain point. And it could be kind of this organic thing where you still, as a new player, experience all the different phases of the game. You just get through them faster because there's less time left. And I don't know, it's just a random thought that I had thinking about it. World of Warcraft has done that. They do that every time there's a new patch for the game. They give you a way to catch up quickly so that you can play with your friends and it still stays fun and a social experience for the people doing it. So I think that Battlestate is on the right path, and there definitely is a lot of potential with this direction that they're taking the game. And it's good to see, frankly.
Well, and I do too. It's an interesting thing because there's so many ways they could go about it. And it's like, they could set like, I don't know, when so many players, when X number of players have unlocked this, it triggers a 14-day timer and then everyone gets access to it, right? Or, there's so many ways they could go about it. Maybe that's not the right way to think about it, but I can think of 10 systems off the top of my head that would give catch-up mechanics available to people who are a little behind or starting late, whatever. But I think what you hit on better than I did was the idea of progression and your example of, it's not really fun to kill, ungeared or lower level players. I'll take kills when I can get them in the beginning of the wipe. But there is a point, like if I'm, running factory because I'm farming scavs or kills or just want to do it, and I kill like a level 1 who's, wearing his trooper armor and his M4, doesn't feel good. I'm not like, oh no. I'm not like cheering and like, oh, I got his stuff. I'm kind of like, oh, I'm going to go throw this in a corner. This person's just getting started. Welcome to Tarkov, you're dead. But, I don't necessarily feel good about owning somebody who's that far behind. So that's a really good point. And I think at certain points in the wipe, progression is really hard if you're behind or brand new or coming back. And I think the thing that Tarkov does better than any game out there is the reward feeling of progression. You're gonna die in this game. You're gonna have to try 10 times at certain tasks. Or if you're on setup, you're gonna have to run customs 30 times to get that thing done. And that's gonna be brutal. It's gonna be hard. There's gonna be highs and lows and everything in between. But if you ever get to a point where you're feeling like the challenge or the reward feeling from progressing is just not worth it in Tarkov, that's why people walk away from it. And so they're testing all these things out. I think it's great for the game. I hope they look at all playstyles, all player types, and they put these things in there that, yeah, if you achieve early, that's great. It's going to help you. But, maybe later it can be easier for another segment. And I just, I don't think that somebody getting access to something relatively easier 3-4 weeks later than you did is really going to hurt your ability to progress, but it may keep them in the game longer and the servers fuller longer into the wipe, so we don't run into those dead periods, halfway 3/4 through the wipe. I agree with your point. It blows my mind up just thinking about how many different ways they could approach this with some of the systems they've already shown us, at the end of the wipe or these new ones at the beginning. So I agree with you. It's really good for the game. And I want to see more and more of experimentation in this game like that, because they really are trying some new stuff that you see in MMOs, and it works there. It can work here.
Yep. It definitely are things that people have tried with other games that have worked well. And Tarkov, being in kind of an MMO, FPS survival, its own genre really, has the ability to draw from the experience of other games, which is encouraging to me and exciting to me because we all love the game. Well, I think that's about all we have for today. We definitely can see the green bar flashing and the red countdown timer because we have gone longer than usual. But before we get out of here, we just want to say a heartfelt thanks to everybody for supporting the show over the years and listening and also being part of the Exfil community. It's been really great that even though we've taken a break from Tarkov and taken a break from just being active and producing shows, we're back. We're excited to be back, but the community is still going and we still get DMs from people all the time. Hey, we just found the podcast. We're thankful that you guys make it. When are you going to make more episodes? And that kind of stuff is really encouraging to us, and it's just fun. It's for no other reason that we're just two dudes recording a podcast about a video game we like to play, and it's fun to hang out with you guys and talk about the game. So heartfelt thanks from Trigger and I, as always, for being part of the Exfil community. But that's about it for right now. So we're going to sign off for now. And just remember, we got more episodes coming. A little teaser for next time. We'll talk about Ground Zero. Probably get in a raid story or two because we didn't get to that tonight. So stay tuned. We're excited to be back.
And snow. We didn't even talk about snow.
Oh, that's true. We got to talk about snow next time. All right.
Good luck in your raids, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See you next time, everybody.